I never thought I'd be sharing a story like this on Reddit, but my entitled family tried to seize my late grandmother's lakeside cabin for profit, and when I stood my ground, they broke in and wrecked it. Writing this helps me vent after everything that unfolded. If you've dealt with selfish relatives, you'll likely relate to my frustration. Trust me, though, this ordeal spiraled far beyond anything I could have predicted. Let me give you some context. My grandmother was my anchor, the one person who truly shaped my life. As a kid, she was my safe space. My mother died when I was young, and my father remarried soon after. He and my stepmother weren't exactly warm or caring. They had 2 children, my stepbrother and stepsister, and built their perfect little family, without me. I always felt like an outsider in their home. My father and stepmother prioritized their new life, and I was often sidelined, a lingering tie to my mom they'd rather ignore. So I spent most of my childhood with my grandmother at her cozy cabin by the lake. That cabin was my refuge, a place where I felt cherished and free to be myself. It wasn't luxurious, old, a bit weathered, but it had soul. My grandmother and I would sit on the porch, gazing at the lake as the sun dipped below the horizon. We'd fish from the dock, wander through the forest, and she'd share tales of her youth. Those moments are my most treasured memories, and I know the cabin meant just as much to her. About a year ago, my grandmother passed away after a prolonged illness. Her death shattered me. She was my rock, my constant. In her will, she left the cabin to me. It was her most cherished possession, and knowing she entrusted it to me meant everything. I saw it as a chance to preserve her legacy and keep the cabin as a family treasure. How naive I was. After the funeral, things were calm for a bit. My father and stepmother, as usual, kept their distance. They rarely included me in their lives, so the silence wasn't surprising. But 2 months later, my father called out of the blue, inviting me to dinner at their house. This was odd. They never reached out like that. My stepmother had always made it clear I wasn't part of their family unit. Still, I thought maybe they wanted to mend things now that my grandmother was gone. So, I went. That was a mistake. Dinner felt tense from the start. My stepmother was overly friendly, pouring me wine and asking about my work, things she'd never cared about before. My father sat quietly, observing me, which made me uneasy. I sensed something was brewing, but I couldn't pinpoint it. After we ate, my father finally revealed their motive. He asked about my plans for the cabin. I shared that I wanted to restore it and use it as a retreat to honor my grandmother's memory. He nodded, but his expression showed displeasure. Then my stepmother chimed in, saying it was foolish to keep the cabin for myself. She suggested turning it into a vacation rental, like an A, B, and R, to generate income. It was clear they'd planned this pitch. She went on about how we could collaborate as a family, fix it up, rent it out, and share the earnings. I was stunned. They didn't care about the cabin's sentimental value. They saw it as a money-making venture and weren't subtle about it. They acted like I was selfish for not agreeing to their scheme. I explained that the cabin held deep meaning for me and that I wanted to keep it as a personal sanctuary to stay connected to my grandmother. I thought they'd respect my stance or at least drop it. I was wrong. My stepmother lost it. She launched into a tirade, accusing me of being ungrateful and wasting a chance to benefit the family. My father, who'd been silent, finally spoke up, saying, "You can't afford to maintain that place. We're offering to help you." Help? Seriously? I told them I didn't need their assistance and had no interest in turning my grandmother's cabin into a business. I left their house that night enraged, hoping they'd let it go once they saw my resolve. I should have known better. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. My phone was flooded with calls and messages from my father and stepmother. At first, they tried persuasion, emphasizing the potential profits and calling me stubborn for resisting. When I ignored them, they piled on the guilt. My stepmother sent a lengthy message about how they needed the money for their retirement, accusing me of hoarding the cabin when it could help everyone. My father sent curt texts like, "Consider what your grandmother would have wanted," or, "You're making a bad choice." I mostly stayed silent, knowing arguing would only escalate things. But then they started showing up at my apartment. I'd come home from work to find my father parked outside, waiting. Or my stepmother would knock, claiming she was just passing by and wanted to chat. The breaking point came when my father showed up at my workplace unannounced, demanding to talk. My colleagues stared, and I was humiliated.